Queen Azshara, wasted villain or prophetical poster hero of midnight, avatar incarnate of Azeroth herself, and why her story mirrors the Blue Child's in the Tale of the Embrace. World of Warcraft Midnight promises that players will help reunify the scattered elven tribes of Azeroth as we defend Quel'Thalas and the Sunwell from the forces of the Void. This tag has brought Azshara to the forefront of many players' minds when it comes to her return in Midnight, with speculation abound that she will lead the invading forces as a villain once again. But isn't the villain trope feeling a bit played out for Azshara at this point? How does it serve her character to have her return once more as a big purple baddie? And what would we do with her after? Well, what if I told you that one of the most iconic characters of this franchise is about to get the biggest glow-up in recent history? Stay tuned to find out all of that and more.
Since the dawn of time, the Mother Moon has stood watch in the night sky over sweet, slumbering Azeroth, while the mighty sun held its post during the light of day. For long and long, the two acted together in a dance of shadow and light, balanced as they nurtured and guarded the world below. The Lady Moon loved Azeroth deeply, and all of its people from afar. And from her love and ponderings of its power was born to her a daughter, the Blue Child. Even the old stories do not tell us how, but we know this much. Out of the lady's love for us, the child, small and blue and marvelous, came into being. It is said that this was the most joyous time that the cosmos had ever known. The stars shone brighter than ever before, and even Azeroth smiled in her deep sleep. All rejoiced in the birth of the child, most of all the Mother Moon. And for long and long they skipped together across the night sky. But one day, the child began to have questions for her mother.
What was I before I was with you?
You are all I had longed for. You were the tears I wept, the dreams I dreamed, the sighs I breathed, and the hope I held in my loneliest heart.
And what am I now?
You are the fulfillment of my hopes, the answer to my cries, a blessing so bright I could not even have imagined you to be as you are.
Then came more, and these questions weighed on her mother's heart.
Mother, these people we watch over each night, are they like us?
They are, and they are not. They are mortals.
What is a mortal?
They are here for a time, and then they are not.
What happens to them?
But the mother did not know the answer to this question, and so remained silent. On the second night, the child had a new question.
Lady Mother, these mortals whom we see each night, can we descend from above them and meet them ourselves?
No, we cannot. We must stay here and watch over sweet Azeroth as she dreams.
What does Azeroth dream about?
And again she did not know the answer, remaining silent once more. And it was the same on the third night.
Lady Mother, what was I before I became myself?
Ah, now you have asked a question to which I know the answer. You were all I wished for, longed for, and dreamed of. You were the thing I loved best, even before I knew you. Loving you makes me happy.
The child looked solemnly at her mother, then asked in a voice so sad, puzzled, and pure that it would make even the coldest heart melt.
What do I need to make me happy?
But the Mother Moon did not know her daughter was not happy, nor did she know what would make the child so. As she had the nights before, the lady stayed silent, except this time tears fell from her pale glowing face to land heavily on the surface of the drowsing world below. The next evening, when the White Lady awoke from her slumber, she turned to smile at her daughter, only to find an empty sky. The blue child was gone. For long and long, the mother was alone once more, her fear and anguish harming the world as she grieved for her daughter's disappearance. Though in time, the child would return. Skipping across the sparkling night sky, she leaped to embrace her mother. The lady blazed, and the child clung to her. The child spoke of her travels, of speaking with distant stars, dancing with other moons and suns, traveling to worlds upon worlds. She had even watched sweet Azeroth, studying the children of our world. And the Mother Moon saw that the blue child had grown wise, as all children must grow. She returned to the lady more than simply a mother's daughter. She was a person all her own. Such is the story of the Embrace, a glimpse into a tale for the children of Azeroth to recount and ponder the nature and patterns of the moon and her family.
Welcome back, heroes! I'm your host, Nazax, and today we're going cosmic once more, and finally dealing with the Magnetar in the room, the Blue Child. You may have noticed that this iconic feature of Azeroth's sky has gone entirely unmentioned so far during the course of the Elune Truth Saga. Well, with the context you've now been provided, we can seamlessly drop the mother of all truth bombs and round out the expansive theory we promised all those weeks ago. Today's report: Queen Azshara's redemption, poster hero of Midnight and the allegory of the Embrace, prodigal child of light and shadow. To begin understanding this mystery, we'll first have to recall the life of Azshara, both her reign as highborn queen of the Kaldori and as tyrannical empress of the cursed Naga, a classic hero's journey in the making. Beautiful and wise beyond her years, Queen Azshara embodied the most coveted traits of her people. Born with golden eyes that at that time was seen as a sign of great destiny. She indulged in all sorts of sorcerous pursuits and constructed a breathtaking bejeweled palace on the shores of the Well of Eternity. There, the most powerful highborn nobles answered to her every beck and call. Night elves of every social standing adored her, and they were so enamored with their queen that they renamed their capital city of Elundris to Zin Ashari, meaning the glory of Azshara. And she was honored with such titles as Daughter of the Moon, Light of 1,000 Moons, Queen born of the Stars, and the Flower of Life. Under Azshara, Night Elf civilization blossomed into a sprawling empire. A dreamscape of gilded spires, vast cities, and other marvels that would not be seen again even in the modern age. In the earlier reign of Queen Azshara, she oversaw the building of a wondrous new temple to Elune, named Lothar Lazal, or Saint of the Sky, which would later become Black Fathom Deeps. By all projections, she was divinely destined to rule and lead the Kaldori, a vision of perfection in the heart of her people, a calling fit for a daughter of the moon. However, her devotion to Elune was either short-lived or mostly undeveloped, for there was one place that the queen and her forces avoided: Mount Hyjal. The spirits and demigods who roamed the sylvan forests unsettled the queen. She knew in her bones that Hyjal was somehow beyond even her influence. As a display of respect to the lowborn elves, she prohibited expansion into Hyjal. In truth, she despised the mountain and the harmony it represented. And as Azshara turned away from the goddess, she began to obsess ever more over the Well of Eternity and its arcane secrets. Yearning for greater knowledge, the queen pushed the highborn to plumb the depths of the well. Their reckless experiments sent torrents of magic crashing through the twisting nether, drawing the eyes of the Burning Legion and their master. The first among the Highborn to hear Sargeras' call was Lord Xavius, one of the most trusted advisors and ultimately dark mentors for the proud queen, as it was him who introduced Azshara to Sargeras. Were it not for Xavius, perhaps Azshara would have defended Azeroth and her precious empire during the Legion's eventual invasion. I mean, we're talking about a guy who gouged his own eyes out and replaced them with rubies so he could commune with Sargeras. Pretty twisted stuff. If you really think about it, by cause and effect, the Sundering was his fault, and Azshara was meant to be a glorious hero. We've seen a glimpse of this in the animatic short Warbringer's Azshara, where we see a noble, if not vain, attempt on her behalf to stave back the crashing waters of the Sundering. This beautiful cinematic portrayal of the calamity paints Queen Azshara in a more sympathetic light than we're used to seeing her, while still maintaining the undying pride that she is oh so famed for, as she desperately tries to save her realm from destruction. And this fish, well, what if the voice speaking to her before she falls into the water is not actually N'Zoth disguised as some random female, but Azeroth, aka Elune, speaking to her one last time before she embraced the shadows? Azshara could have been a key defender of Azeroth and defeated the Burning Legion herself. But instead, Xavius, that insidious, demon-loving, eyeless freak, sowed the seeds for her downfall. And the Queen's ambition, her thirst for knowledge, would not be quenched. Well, maybe not figuratively, but quite literally, she drowns. As of course we all know the story of the Sundering, the catastrophic world-changing event caused by a failed summoning of Sargeras. Azshara's choices in the War of the Ancients to ally with the demon lords of the Burning Legion marked a point of no return for the once adored queen. And as a permanent signifier of this crossed threshold, the world she knew and coveted was washed away. As her once thriving civilization crumbled under the waves, a new voice spoke to her from the deep. The chained old god N'Zoth bargained with Azshara and gifted his power to the highborn queen and her people, granting them a second life as the wrathful Naga. As queen of the tides, Azshara would slowly rebuild her fallen empire, working alongside N'Zoth as a temporary but necessary ally, as she challenged the surface dwellers of Azeroth. We would not face her ourselves until patch 8.2 Rise of Azshara, when we found our way to Nazjatar. Like an expert catfish, she baits us through the Eternal Palace to the inmost depths of her cavernous lair, built upon the Titan-forged prison housing N'Zoth. Having waited for millennia, the Naga Queen in truth was waiting to betray her shadowy master the moment she freed him, and N'Zoth knew this all too well. Our long-awaited battle against Queen Azshara sees the champions of Azeroth heroically take her down, though unwittingly, the heart of Azeroth we brought with us in this ordeal unlocked the old god's chains and set him loose. As Azshara teeters on the brink of death, N'Zoth's shadowy tendrils ensnare her once more, reviving but caging the queen in the horrific realm of Ny'alotha. It is there that we face her subjugator and see Azshara herself in-game for the last time so far. As we break her bonds in exchange for the Blade of the Black Empire, which once housed Xal'atath, she reveals to us her plans to betray N'Zoth and seizes this chance for freedom. Before she departs, Azshara claims that she no longer has any interest in intermediaries and heralds, and that she seeks to claim the true throne of power, opening a voiding nether portal and taking to the cosmos for deeper answers. It's at this moment I'd like to call to your attention that so far we've been following a familiar, iconic, mythic tale that is told across generations of Earthling cultures, the monomyth. Known better as the hero's journey, this framework of legendary storytelling was highlighted by Joseph Campbell in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. From Star Wars to Lord of the Rings, the echoed pattern of this cyclical story can be traced in countless works of fiction. As you can see in this chart, we've found rather suitable events in Azshara's life that so far mark the steps of the monomyth. And when we combine this outline with the poetic fairy tale of the Embrace, I believe we find a marvelously hidden clue to the big things coming in Midnight. Similarly adored by all, Azshara, Daughter of the Moon, and the Blue Child are both characterized by their desire for knowledge, paving their own road in life rather than lingering under the limitations and guidance of their mothers. Just as the Blue Child had roamed the cosmos, learning of its wonders, we now see Azshara on a similar path of discovery, a pursuit of understanding for the very nature of reality, the true throne of power. In Folks and Fairy Tales of Azeroth, there are two significant celestial stories recounted that involve the moons, the Embrace and the Eyes of the Earth Mother. The reader will find that these stories primarily serve as flavorful mythos around the natural physics of the moons, the sun, and Azeroth. Such things as solar and lunar eclipses, new moons, harvest moons, and all viewable celestial phenomena are interpretable through cultural lenses of the Tauren and humans, and a story is paired to the natural event to explain why it happens. What's particularly strange about the Embrace getting this treatment, however, is that it suddenly canonized what was understood to be a mistake and glitch in WoW's Skybox for many years, where the second moon, the Blue Child, just did not appear in-game. Following a weather update just before the Burning Crusade's release, the secondary blue moon of Azeroth did not appear consistently in the game's skybox until it was fixed in Mists of Pandaria, despite being visible during specific quests like when Kalecgos was empowered by the conjunction of the two moons. I think it's possible that the creators of this fairy tale utilized the non-canonical glitch in order to provide an allegory to the player base. A disguised clue about a child who strayed from their mother, only to then embrace her once more after many ages apart. And they've done so most strikingly perhaps in the series of questions that the Blue Child asks her mother. These questions highlight her profound desire for answers to significant concepts like, what am I? Where do I come from? And most notably, the Blue Child asks the White Lady, quote, these mortals who we see each night, can we descend from above them and meet them ourselves? I mean, what a question, and I think it's telling of where the Blue Child went during her disappearance. See, upon the child's return, she tells her mother of her travels, speaking of going to other star systems, dancing with other suns and moons, but also somehow she had watched and learned of Azeroth and its peoples. So how did the child disappear from her mother's sight, but also learn about Azeroth at the same time? I mean, it's just a tale about a seemingly large physical moon after all, right? Well, let's zoom in on the night the child disappears and flag some interesting details. On the night that the child asks her mother, what do I need to make me happy? The White Lady cannot respond, and tears fell from her pale, glowing face to land heavily on the surface of the drowsing world below. Is it just me, or is it interesting that the same night that triggers the child's departure is marked by what seems to be describing falling stars? And of course, we all know that Azshara is known as the Queen born of the stars. Something's fishy here, and it's exactly the kind you find when dealing with Naga. This is where our predictions for Azshara's grand return can begin. Many argue that Azshara could have held her own expansion instead of being relegated to a patch villain in Battle for Azeroth, feeling unsatisfied with her lack of spotlight and rushed boss fight. And there's a certain someone we've seen get the same treatment once before. Illidan Stormrage. I propose that Azshara's return to Warcraft will mirror Illidan's, who was originally cut short in the Burning Crusade, only to return bigger and better than ever as the poster hero of Legion and the new class it introduced. I think that Midnight will serve as Azshara's equivalent to Legion, where the truly epic sorceress finally gets her time to shine. Not as the villain, but the hero. Remember Azshara's brilliant golden eyes? What if the Prime Naru Zera, in her blind faith of the light, mistook Illidan's storm rage for the sign she was awaiting, and it was meant to be Azshara all along? Whereas Illidan rejected the gift, spitting in the face of prophetic heroes, Azshara's descent into the watery underworld, the depths of the void, and her heroic return in the light might just prove her to be the prodigal child of shadow and light, foreseen by the Naru. As she chases the true throne of power, Azshara could learn to master both void and light by discovering the true nature of the very cosmos she was born from and embracing the mother she had been running from all her life, Elune. In our video, Secrets of Elune, Shadows and Light, we detail the universal theory of Elune being a twofold cosmic entity. She is not just Azeroth's moon, but every moon and every sun. She is the cosmos herself, made up of the physical great dark beyond and the spiritual twisting nether, born from the first collision of the pure light and shadow. You might ask, is there sufficient evidence to suggest that Elune is more than just a lunar deity? I'd say yes. Newer examples, like the Night Warriors from another planet in Ardenweald, establish that Elune's power is interstellar and is not limited to Azeroth alone. And many old examples, as blatant as balance druids utilizing solar, lunar, and star spells, paint a picture of a true celestial deity more than just a lunar one. Elune's night elf children, the Kaldarai, are known as the children of the stars. And of course, what are stars but distant suns? This collection of star-related motifs places Elune potentially more as a gravity being more than anything. A true balanced representation of light and shadow in action. As in real-world physics, stars themselves can become black holes. So, what of Azeroth then? Why is she called the Earth Mother, and how is Elune related to her? I propose that Azeroth is not just any world soul, but that for all intents and purposes, Azeroth and Elune are the same force. One that inhabits reality and one that encompasses it. Just as Azeroth is an avatar of Elune, born to walk among her Titan children and help maintain the balance of the cosmos, Azshara is a form to walk among mortals, daughters of daughters, the children of shadows and light. Through the whispers of stars and the silence of the void, Azshara could uncover truths that have long been feared by even the Titans themselves. In her travels, she learns of the intertwined nature of light and shadow, realizing that her downfall in the quest for power was but a mere reflection of a deeper, universal balance, and that true power lies in the combination of the two. This embrace of the eternal conflict mirrors the Blue Child's return to the White Lady, as Azshara's journey has come full circle, just like the cycle that Elune represents. Azshara sheds her hideous, corrupted Naga form, ridding herself of her scarred past, using the very forces that birthed creation. With this renewed form, Azshara rises as a balancer and weaver of both the void and the light, finding that the true power she sought so fiercely was back home all along. The world soul of Azeroth, a nexus of creation and destruction, of astral and physical, and of light and shadow. However, the cosmic mother, that nascent titan to be, was sought by others as well. And the Void Lord Dementius had their eyes set on Azeroth. With this dire epiphany, Azshara makes her way into the spotlight of Midnight, radiant and ready to defend her world rather than doom it as she had before. Her new mastery of the light and its natural shadow have garnered her new allies, such as the Ethereals of the Twisting Nether, who she has trained as an elite force of Nethermancers, in an exchange for a home on Azeroth should they aid in the defense against Dementius. The Nethermancer hero class wields the incredible cosmic forces of void and light, weaving devastating entropic and restorative magics. And the Ethereals, our newest allies and playable race, embody the very essence of resilience and adaptability. So gear up, champions, and step into Midnight, not just as defenders, but as the pioneers of this new horizon, and champions of the eternal conflict. Thank you so very much for tuning in to this episode of Knowledge Wars, where the truth isn't just out there, it's buried under layers of perspective-based storytelling and Titan machinery. Remember, folks, you are the resistance to the all-devouring void.